So next we're going to set up some of the states. And to do this, we're going to get the state node as our state node and the state machine node. As I mentioned before, the state actually has the simulate particles inside it. So we actually don't need simulate particles anymore. If you open up a state, you'll see inside there's the simulate particles. So how do we use states? Well, we're going to use several different states to control different parts of our sequence. The state machine allows you to connect multiple states and switch between states. So we're going to start with one state, not very exciting, but we want to start simple, and we're going to hook the state into the state machine execute state. Now what are we going to do with the state? Well, first of all, we want it to do something. So we want to control the animation. We don't want to see each sequence, we want to control the animation. So we're going to look at the instant animation, and there's actually control instant animation node, and this is a really useful node, and I'm going to actually hook this in to execute on every frame, and that means while it's in the state it's going to execute this node every time, very similar to hooking it into the final ice tree. And then we can set the animation start and end time. We can look at our mixer of our character and actually see what those times were, and we can see here that the first one is going from 1 to 46. So just going to leave that open for the moment. So we'll just set this one to start at frame 1 and end at frame 46. And if we hit play now, we'll see it plays the first animation, and these aren't perfect loops, but when it hits frame 46, instead of going back to the original one, it's going to loop and do it again. So you just saw a little jump there, and now it's on the second loop. So you see this one here is playing different animation to this one because our state is allowing it, and this node is allowing it to loop that animation over and over again. So I'm happy my walk state is working now. Of course, we want some way of getting out of a state. In that case, we can use a timer, and there's a start timer and test timer. We're going to get both those nodes, and if we hook the start timer into execute once on enter state, that means when we enter the state, and this actually enters the state on emit, it's going to execute this once. It's also good because if we go back to the state, we can restart the timer. And we're going to set this timer to say 2 seconds, and we'll just say reset if started. That means if we switch mid-state, it's going to just reset the timer. And we're going to set this test timer into the trigger, and each timer has a name. So this is timer 1, and it's now testing timer 1. If you're using multiple timers, be aware of what timer you're using. You can have up to 20 or so timers. So what's going to happen when it gets to this state? Well, we can give it a color, and we can say when the trigger goes off, did trigger 2, want trigger 1. When the trigger goes off, we can delete this one here, delete port if you add an extra one you don't want. We want to switch to state 1. And we said debug, and that just gives everything a color, so you'll now notice the particles are blue until they go to the next state. So let's go make our next state. We can just copy and paste that state, Control C, Control V, hook this state in, and we'll call this one, this will be state 1, and we'll go to state 2 eventually. We'll give it a different color, just so it's easy to see when we've changed state. Make this a greenish color, and let's see what happens here. So everything goes, and the characters are walking, and then after 60 seconds, everything's going to turn to the next color, hopefully, if this worked correctly. So it should be any second now, should be changing to the next state, and there it goes at frame 60. And they've also stopped walking, because no longer is it doing the control instant animation at every frame. So we're going to switch this to the next one. We're going to copy this and put this in. This will be our run state, and we'll hook this one into execute on every frame, but we're going to use different frame numbers. We're going to use the ones from the run, and those will be these frames here. So it'll be starting at frame, I don't want to start at frame 59, I want to go at frame 60 because 59 can cause weird results. So I'm going from frame 60 to 77. So we'll just do that. Frame 60 to 77. And just so we don't have to watch it quite as long, I'm going to change the timer to just 1 second at this time. And now when we hit play, they will start by walking, and then when it switches, now they'll start running. Now they're running at walking speed, so legs are sliding like crazy, but we can see now how we can use the states to go from one state to another state. The final state would be the die state, and we'll do that in a little bit later once we've got the animation time controlled.